Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I thought I would answer a question I've been asked quite a few times, and it's, Jason, why don't you front squat? Jason, you should put front squats in your routine. And I want to state up front, I am not against front squats. They have their place as a training tool. Okay, so I don't want people to think I'm being anti-front squat or to say that they're useless or anything else, because they're not. They absolutely have their place in certain training programs. So why don't I front squat? Well, number one, I don't have a harness. Number two, I don't Olympic lift. And number three, I box squat. Like, you guys don't even see me really do back squats. So why does front squat even come into the equation? All right, I do box squats with all these different bars, bands, chains, max work, speed work. You don't really see me squatting for reps, though. I don't really squat for rep work outside of the speed work. Not something I do. So a lot of people would be front squatting. They would be doing so for reps. Now, what we need to also discuss here is that the front squat, essentially what it does is that it pulls your center of gravity further forward, just like a safety squat bar does, just kind of to the next degree up, depending upon, what bar you compare it to. Okay, so when you're talking about front squatting from a biomechanic perspective, and we set aside how you choose to rack it at the top, which actually has its own sport-specific applications, what we are doing is really creating like an upper and middle back exercise. Very, very rarely are your legs going to be the limiting factor. Now, would that be true if we do it off of a box necessarily? I don't know, that might be a different beast. Because if we're box squatting, especially for like speed squats, okay, that's a little bit different. That's a little bit different because we're not going to have really the same weight up top, and it's really the acceleration that matters. But in my case, I'm actually trying to use the bars for my speed squats that I am the strongest at, that are most comfortable on my shoulders. Okay, I'm trying to use the ones that I can accelerate the most weight. Why? Because that's what I'm doing with my speed work these days. Is it to say that at some point a phase of speed front squats wouldn't be useful off of a box? Sure, it could be. It could be, and I wouldn't completely reject the idea either. Right now, it's just not what I need, though. I'm trying to work on general squatting for most of that work. And I have enough variations to test. Right? I have multiple barbells. I have bands. I have chains. I have easily 20 or 30 different box squats on my back that I can actually test for maxes. So I don't need the variation there. And that would be a good test of strength, like if you wanted to really see how much your upper back was limiting you on a max squat. Hey, that would be a useful test there. If you have a harness. If you have a front squat harness, because we're simply looking at the center of gravity in that case. Right? Because that's one element of the front squat of what you're doing a little bit different. It shifts the center of gravity further forward, makes you stay more upright, makes you use more back to keep that bar stable and in the right position. Even with a lighter weight, right, you're not going to be able to use as much weight. So we're dealing with a different beast here. Right, we're dealing with a totally different beast here. And it's just not the same. Then we come over to the point of people say, well, what about not a harness? You're really strong, that's going to be problematic in the long term. Like when you're doing a ton of training, your volumes are high, doing a bunch of stuff with it racked in your hands is not ideal unless you need the rack position. And I want people to understand that there's some specificity of training there also. Now, I've also seen people say, well, you could cross arms, you could stick your arms forward. And one of my regular people, like, I had to ban a troll for that on my social media the other day. Right? He had posted something about feeling like a lift I was doing was dangerous or had recommended. And he's a regular poster, but he showed himself front squatting with his arms completely forward, like Superman position with a bar sitting up on his delts. That will wreck your shoulders. Eventually that will wreck your shoulders. So will the cross arm way of doing it. You're going to have to be a weak dude to get away with that for any length of time. You're strong, that's going to be a problem. You can't do that. So your options are going to be the rack position, or a harness. Now, you would use the harness for what purpose? If you're just trying to get the shift in the center of gravity, right? Which is a lot of what a lot of people think of with the front squat. Now, a lot of people think that means it's a quad exercise. No, it's not that great for quads. It's not any better than a back squat in any way for quads. That's a myth. Upper back, now that's a different animal. So what about the rack position? Well, what's the benefit of that? It's for weightlifting. What do we mean by weightlifting? The Olympic lifts. Right? The name of that sport is called weightlifting in the Olympics. What's a front squat do for you? Watch them do a clean and jerk. Watch the full clean. Not a muscle clean, not a power clean, a full clean. What does a full clean involve? They clean the weight up and they catch it and drop into a front squat. It drops into, when they duck under it, into a front squat. They catch it, drop all the way down into a full depth front squat. Now, that amount of depth is going to vary depending upon that lifter's mobility and strength. But it tends to be pretty deep. More often than not, proficient weightlifters tend to drop into a full squat when they do that in a front squat position because of where they catch it. Because they can't catch it behind their head. And then they squat it back up. And they do this for a max. Okay? They do this for a max. And here's the point I'm going to make. If your goal is to say clean and jerk 400 pounds, just over 180 kilos, because they always do it in kilos anyway. Let's say your goal is to clean and jerk 180 kilos. How much do you think you're going to have to be able to front squat for a max to be able to catch that 180 and drop into the front squat and then pop it up? Without completely exhausting yourself, by the way. I'm going to say that that's more difficult than a normal front squat. I'll go so far as to say that if your max front squat is 180 kilos, that's going to be pretty difficult to do because you're not just taking it out of a rack in that position and walking it out and then dropping. You have to clean it up, which bleeds energy, and then you have to catch it and drop it in that position. All right, that is, even under the best of circumstances, even if you have the coordination down effectively, which you're probably going to have to do. I mean, you're talking about cleaning and jerking 180 kilos, you better have that coordinated down pretty damn efficient. But you have to catch it. And at the same time, drop under it. So you're having to drop down and catch that weight. And then come back up with it. That's going to be a more difficult eccentric than walking it out of a rack and doing it already racked. Right? That is actually going to be a little bit harder. So if that's the case, you're going to have to be really good at front squatting. If you want to do that, you're going to have to be good at it. You're going to have to specifically be good at it. And you're going to have to be able to catch that weight in your hands and hold it there. You guys understand why this particular sport, for getting really good at a full clean, why the front squat matters? Because it's part of the exercise. It's part of the movement. So you have to be proficient at not just the front squat position, but the ability to catch that weight in the air while dropping into the eccentric of that and then doing a heavy front squat. We don't need that if you're not going to do a full clean. It's not a necessary skill. It's not even about developing strength. That's a specific skill. And here's the issue. It's going to interfere with a lot of your other training. Right? That's going to be hard on your wrists. It tends to be hard on your hands. It's a lot of fatigue you're building up from that is going to limit your ability to train other stuff. So if you don't have to do a full clean, I would argue you probably shouldn't spend a lot of time on the front squat unless you just really personally enjoy it. Right? So if you're wanting the position, you're going to need a harness for it. But I would also argue that in some cases you would be better off doing a different type of squat. Might be cases where it is a good choice, and there's going to be a lot of cases where it isn't. And you've got to make it work. And in my case, it just doesn't match with what I'm trying to do with my training right now. Nothing wrong with it as a tool. I've done heavy front squats, right? I've done heavy front squats. I've used them as a tool. They're not a tool that I need right now or value at the moment. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.